Okay. All right. So I'm going to tag some documents for production real quick, just that way we have something.
Okay.
Come on. There we go. We'll tag them for initial disclosure statement. For me, what I like to do is I tag those documents, I right click, I do a search for it, and then I save that search. I'm just going to call it today's production. I tell people to put a date. But now I have a saved search, and then when I go to do my production, I can run it off a saved search instead of running a search. I don't know. I like it better that way. I'm a belts and suspenders type of gal. So I'm going to close out desktop, and we're going to go into administration. So not in the case management tab, but now the production tab. I'm going to go to create production, select our client and case. I'm going to go to search, execute search, and I'm going to load my save search, which is today's production. Hit search, and I should come up with what, 6 documents? Oh, I had that production shield on, remember? That said anything that any document tagged with attorney-client privilege won't be produced. That production shield came up. So one of these documents violates that production shield. That document can't be produced. Do I want to export that list to a text file for viewing? No. Would you like to remove these shielded documents from the production set and proceed with the production? Yes. I'm just going to say yes for now. Clients may want to go and remove that production, so they'll hit no. Maybe they'll want to take a second look at all the documents they tagged, whatever the case may be. I'm going to continue for now. If we're sending out load files, we can choose the sorting feature in which we want it to produce. So it'll automatically default to sorting by big doc. Then maybe we want to start sorting by creation date and time, or custodian, any field we want. We can do it ascending or descending, and we can do a couple different levels. So we'll use this search. These little circles mean only one can be done, and then these squares are secondary. So typically, our clients will want to do images and then export native and export text. That's typical. They may want to do a PDF production, make them searchable, and also export native and text, but typically they do the images, those TIFF files. So export native files, so it's going to export the native version, and it's also going to export that extracted text. We can make page level exclusions, so we can say don't include documents tagged confidential at the page level. We can do folder level options, so if we didn't want the folder to say images, we wanted to say image, we could change it that way. If we didn't want the OCR folder to say OCR and we wanted to say text, we could change it here. Typically, people aren't changing it, but you can.
Okay.
Image file naming options. If we are going to put beg docs on there, we want to use this use production image key as file name, because that production image key is going to be that prod beg now. Use original file name. You're going to have problems if they're duplicate file names, right? Because you can't save them all to a folder. You can renumber everything. You can select a file name based on a field. You can remove delimiters. If you're checking that file name box, you can choose to remove those delimiters so it doesn't mess you up. OCR extracted text options. So OCR document if OCR does not exist, because we're extracting text. You should have all your documents OCR'd. Maybe you don't want to check this box because you know that a bunch of documents will say they need to be OCR'd, but they have no OCR text available to them, so you can deselect it or not. You can create the OCR at a document level or page level. I'm not sure if it's still true, but Concordance could only accept page level OCR and not document level OCR. But you can do it at the document level or the page level. Once we add our load files to this path will become available for us. So I'm going to select Concordance DAT. And now this box use path to text file and load files. So when we were loading yesterday in our load files, we loaded that DAT file and it had a text path associated with it. If we didn't use text file path in the load files, it would actually load all the text and it'd be one ugly messed up DAT file. So now we have this new button that loads in that text
Okay, cool.
path instead of the actual text. We do need to make sure we add that field, obviously, but that becomes available. Native file options. So if we redacted a document on the image tab, that native, because we don't touch the natives, still has that text that we blocked out. So we want to make sure we exclude native file if page is redacted or otherwise excluded. Because if we give them the native, then we're also giving them the stuff we redacted, which makes
Got
no
it.
sense, right?
Yeah.
We
Yes,
do have
because
some
that's
native.
they can see everything.
Yeah, it defeats the purpose. So we do have a couple of native file options. Use production key for native file name. We want to do that. We can append original file name, kind of like the same thing for the images. We can choose which file types we give them, which ones we don't. We can put in a placeholder for ones we don't want to give them.
So,
Go ahead.
so that's where we would put that's where we put a placeholder. So, I had a call where like it was I forgot, I think it was a bat file, BAT or something like that. So then he just wanted it to where it just shows a slip sheet, right? Is that what it is?
Yes, yeah, it'll be a slip sheet, and I mean it can be any text you want. So typically, it would be something like native file not provided, image redacted, or
Got it.
something like that. So
Okay.
that way they don't think it's not just missing. If we just don't have a native file for that document, they'll run a gaps report and say, look at all these native files we didn't get.
Mhm.
Well, if you have a slip sheet, it looks like you got the native file, but when you load it, it'll say, nope, native file not provided, image redacted.
Yeah, and then we usually that like, or not we, but is it common for like Excels to be something like that too? Because I know like sometimes when it comes into like an image or something like that, it does like 8 pages instead of just like a one Excel
So
sheet.
for the natives, it depends. So if we've redacted
Okay.
the native, we'll have that slip sheet that says image was redacted. If we don't want to produce maybe the image for it, so we do like a page level exclusion or file type exclusion for the production, and we only produce the native, we'd select here only produce Excel spreadsheets or something, and maybe the image slip sheet would be like image not produced, or this file type was an Excel spreadsheet, so we're not doing it.
Okay.
Redaction exclusions for the text. So remove redacted excluded pages areas only. So it's just going to remove a chunk from the text file. Replace entire file for that text with a placeholder that says redacted file or whatever you want it to say, or
Okay.
you just don't include it for that file. So again, it's just a missing one. Best practice is to probably have a slip sheet there just to say that was file redacted. You could just remove that portion, which is fine too. Skipping an entire document, it's acceptable. No one's going to yell at you. It's just they might come back to you and say, hey, why didn't I get all these particular text files? Then you just shout back like, well, dude, they were redacted. But it might take you a while to figure out why those weren't produced. Then you'll be like, oh yeah, they were redacted. Output options, you got to give your production name. We'll do 2020-05, 27, plaintiff IDS, or plaintiff's initial disclosure statement. Production volumes. Typically, they'll say volume, that'll be the prefix. They can be any prefix they want. They can be PLS if you want. For me, my typical protocol is to do consecutive numbering. So every time I run a production, it's not a new number, it's a continuing number. That way, if I have to reconstruct my production history, or if I have to reproduce, or somebody says, hey, volume number 7's messed up, I don't have to go in and figure out which volume 7 of which production. I just have to look for volume 7, and I don't have to find 7 sevens and figure out what it is going on. That's just my own personal preference. Some people just start back at 1.
Okay, so is that where you would change it right there? So say if we do 1 and then you do another production, you would just change it to 2 after?
Yeah, or whatever number
Or
it ended on.
Got it.
Output directory, where do you want these files to save? So you'd browse out, create a folder. I'll just put it in that
Oh,
folder
sorry
for
about
now.
that. On the starting index and then the width when it says 3, does that mean just how many altogether? So
Numbers
0,
total.
0, 1. Got it.
Yep. So I just chose an output directory. It's going to give me an error that this has stuff in it, but it should be fine. It's going
Okay.
to automatically pop an error log into that same location. Best practice for me, I think, is to keep this error log somewhere separate. Create a folder within this case for error logs. I say that because you will inevitably be in a hurry when you're doing production and forget to remove that error log and produce the error log to the other side.
So you're
Now, you
saying
should
make a folder like inside of that, like so like make a folder
outside of
inside
it.
this one that
Yeah,
says outside of it. Got it. Got it.
For all your error logs for all your productions. Not that you'll have like huge errors. I mean, your production will be fabulous and perfect. But in the case that there's some errors and you know what those errors are, and it's only because, you know, you clicked OCR if OCR doesn't exist and it's just not a document that can OCR, it gave you a bunch of errors. They then look at that error log and think you're hiding something, that you're being nefarious. You're not, but you don't even want to start that conversation.
Okay.
So I save it other places. Max volume size, this really only comes into play if you're saving to a CD or a DVD or maybe a flash drive that's pretty small, right? Typically, you're uploading to an FTP. So it really doesn't matter how big, so to speak, it breaks up. But back in the day, probably people are still using it, I'm guessing. You used to have to burn to CD and DVD. Well, if your volume production was pretty large, you'd have to go in and figure out where to split it and recreate and move folders everywhere just to fit on CDs.
That does not sound fun.
You know, like 10 CDs or whatever. Then you would maybe receive that on the other end, and then you'd have to like save each CD and pop it back into the right place so that way the paths worked. I've had to do that. It was a pain in the butt. So typically no limits fine because we're going to an FTP and there's not really a size limit for that. But if you're going to a DVD or a CD, so if you're walking through someone through a production or they're having errors, this could be it. You know, they're just hitting max size for their DVD and they have to split their production up. So you might as well have SE split that production for them. Missing images. Create images if they don't exist. Add created images to the case. I always say if you're doing this, add created images to the case. You might as well kill two birds with one stone, right? Create color images if you want. For load files, some people just, it's DLF. That was the one that brings in cat.
Got it.
Some people just select all of these and say use what you want. There we go. Some people only say I'm giving you 2 of them. Some people, you know, whatever the case may be. So I'm just going to select all of them today. Which fields do you want to bring over? So we automatically populate prod beg, no prod beg, or prod end, no prod beg attach, prod end attach. Then pop in your other fields. Probably application version, you can give them. Attorney comments, you're not going to. Author, big doc, big attach, those are your control numbers. You're not giving it to them. Body is the most important one if you're going to use the text file path, right? And you need to also make sure you have a native file path. Did I pass file path? So you want to make sure you have your file path and your text file path because otherwise they're not going to connect, right? When you load it, there's nothing to connect those. So whatever fields you want, just make sure you have body and file path in your prods.
Got it.
Those are bare minimums. The rest is up to you or your ESI protocol.
And I forgot. I must have not saw. It automatically does the production beg doc, production end doc, right? The ones in quotations are automatically there. Okay.
Yes. Yep. And then you can just reorder with these arrows in whatever order you want.
Okay.
All right. So we'll go to image options. So do we want to do single page tips or multi-page tips? Do we want to keep the original DPI or change it? Do we want to keep color, keep black and white? Do we want to force everything to color? Do we want to force everything to black and white? How do we want to deal with it?
So
Page
on the
1.
single page, does that mean like, say if there's the ones that have like the families where it's like 0.001, 0.002, if you do a single, that means it's gonna have a page for each, right?
Yes.
And then if it's multi-page, it's gonna combine them
Yes.
into the file.
So
Okay, cool.
one
Just
file
double
per
check.
document or one file per page. Is that different?
Got it.
Page scaling, do you want it scaled down? Do you want it to fit on a letter instead of a legal size? Do you want to do some image clipping, change some margins? This is global, so it does it across your entire production. So you need to make sure that if you're making a change, it's okay that it goes to everything. Endorsement options. So do you want those redactions to be burned in? Do you want them to be color coded? Do you want to change everything to black with white font? How do you want to handle them? Do you want to produce those annotations?
Mhm.
Probably, usually not. Watermark. Do you want to burn a watermark onto it? Image keys. We want to renumber our image keys. This is where we're doing our production value. So I'm going to call this, what was our client's name? I don't even remember. Don Francisco, right?
Mhm.
All right. So I'm just going to call this Francisco as my prefix. I don't like delimiters for my prod bag docs, but that's a personal preference. So it's going to be
Yeah.
Francisco, a whole bunch of zeros, and my starting number is going to be 1. Any supplemental disclosures is going to pick up at the last number I left off at. So I'm going to need to change this number for every production. I won't change the prefix, probably, but I will change the number.
Okay.
I can change which font, color. For big docs or for prod big docs, you want to apply to all pages, not select pages. And then we need to map it. So I'm going to map it to the bottom right-hand corner. It's typically where these big doc numbers live. Oh, big thing. If you want to change how many zeros are, totally inclined to do this, right? That
Okay.
totally makes sense. It doesn't. If you look at this image key, you still have all those zeros. You need to use this width changer. Otherwise, it will not accept it. So there's a
Okay.
reason
Oh.
this little width
Mm.
thing is here. You can't delete the zeros. You have to use that width to change how many zeros are there.
Okay.
Tag options. Do you want to burn in those tags? So if it says attorney-client privilege, do I want to burn in attorney-client privilege to that document? If it's confidential, do I want to burn the words confidential into it? Now, if I have like subject to PO, but I don't like the PO acronym, I want it to specifically say subject to protective order, I can type in this alternate text. Maybe I want it all in capitals too. And it'll just reinterpret that tag. So anytime a document is tagged with subject to PO, that document will have a burned in text that says subject to protective order. And then where do I want it burned in? I'm going to say top left. I know it says subject to PO here. It will be this alternative text. And then you can choose which font and color, just like you could with your big doc images.
Okay. So when it says selected tag, it just says so you're naming it to what it is, but the alternate text is gonna say it's subject to protective order.
Yep. And so
Okay.
that's at
Cool.
the document level. If we have page level tags and we've tagged documents at the page level, we'll want to do those. There's a tag that says both, so it'll capture both. So if I tagged both pages and full documents with subject to protective order, I want to be on that both tab and put it somewhere, right?
Okay.
I'm
Mhm.
going to remove that one. So I'll put both so that way it'll capture everything. I can also burn in data fields, just like when we're talking about printing, I can burn in those data fields to my production as well. So maybe I want custodian burned in to the top left. Maybe I want file name bottom left. I can do that. I can also, again, it can kind of preview what those file names are on my particular document. I can do custom text. So it's not a tag, it's not a production number. It is literally just going to be pushed on every single page or first page or skip first page of my production. So a common one for me at my last law firm was not contribution, attorneys size only, something like that.
Okay.
and then I'd put it, you know, maybe in red and map it to the top right or something like that. Just so that way it was really apparent. But it's going to be on every single document that I produced today. It's not necessarily a tag. Kind of like a watermark, but instead it's, you know, in one of these corners.
Okay.
Page layout, do match image orientation. Otherwise, it's going to push everything to portrait that shouldn't be portrait, or everything to landscape that shouldn't be landscape. You want to match the image orientation. So that way it's burned in nice, and as you're flipping through it, it looks normal. Summary. So these are all the documents we're going to produce. These are all those prod bag nose, or the regular bag nose, not the prod bag nose. If we want to see a preview, we just select the image, go down here, create preview, and it'll give us a little preview. So we have that Ariana Ackers custodian, not for inmate distribution, attorney's eyes only. We have a confidentiality tag down here from another one. And then our Bates numbering is down here that says Francisca. Our production settings, so just a summary of all the production settings we used. We'll go to produce. We can delay the start of our production. So if we want to delay it 5 minutes, 20 minutes because our bandwidth is slow, somebody else is running a production, so we're not going to run a production on top of it. Whatever the case may be, you can change the start time. You can pick a time or just pick an interval. Okay. Production numbering, we want to make sure we write down or write back these production numbers to our database, so that way we don't have to manually do it or create that cross-reference. I do not have production bag doc fields in here. That's okay. I can just create new field, call them prod bag new. I can type. I didn't put prod, I put pro. Okay, prod bag no. I'll need one for my end no. And then I'll need the same for my attaches as well. So if I don't have one, we don't have to fret.
Okay. So this is gonna put it back into the case. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Prod bag attach, and then prod and attach. Where's my prods? I don't see it. Okay. Okay. Sorry, my.
Yeah. How come they weren't there?
Because they don't update.
Okay.
Overwrite existing fields means it's going to clear out any existing data if these were already created. Append will just add to. Mm-hmm. We can save the template. So what I usually see a lot of the times is the admin will come in here. There will be an ESI protocol in place that says exactly how they produce it, what fields they produce, what load files they produce, all of that information. They'll kind of create a dummy production, and instead of hitting the start production, they'll push save template. And they won't actually produce anything, but it will be their template, right? So they didn't have to produce anything, but now when somebody does go to produce, they already have a template to use. So it's pretty helpful. In this case, we'll just start our production, and then we'll be able to see our production. Data already exists in this output directory. Remember, I told you it was already used. So it's just going to overwrite it. So it might be a little ugly. Exporting those 5 documents, we see our status. It's flushing the index and putting all that information of those prod bag nodes and prod attaches, and we're done. Okay. Total 5 documents produced. If I want to go out to that folder on my desktop, wherever I placed it, yeah, put it in here. We can go in and see these are all my load files. Those are my images, my natives, my text folder. I can go back to production. Select my case. Come on. Oh, I need to refresh this. Sometimes it doesn't like it if I do it all in one session. So if I save that template, whether I did the ESI protocol or, you know, and didn't actually run the production, or I ran a production and now I'm going to do another production, I select my case, come in here, select my docs. Oh, my template's not coming up. Come on. There we go. Maybe that'll. There we go. Okay. It just needed to refresh. I probably should just close it out. So I'm going to select my case. I would import my template and select which template I wanted to use. So I'm going to select that one, select my range of documents, use range for production. Oops, I don't want to see that. And it'll automatically populate everything I selected. You do need to make sure you redo the production name because it's going to come over as the same. You're going to have to change your output directory because it's going to come over the same. And you'll also need to change your image key because it's not going to populate. You'll need to change it to what the next starting number should be.
Which is like 6, right? Because we did 5 documents, right? Or it's what
it goes by
you have
page.
to, okay.
It goes by page. So if it ended at 555, you'd type in 56. So do
Got it.
that next. But otherwise, you'd be ready to produce.
Okay.
So it's really easy. If they don't save a template, it's not the end of the world. We have this production history tab. So if I select my case, go to production history tab, all my production history saved here. So I could just do what I did last time. Load production settings. It slightly looks different, not a huge difference. Instead of just doing just that name, it now says copy of, but otherwise it's the same. Yeah. Otherwise, it looks all exactly the same. You'll still need to change that number. You'll still need to change your path. It just says copy of instead of the other way.